Confirming showings eats up your time. The constant emails, endless back and forth, and the missed clients when things slip through the cracks. In this video, I'm going to show you a workflow that fixes all of that using an AI caller that confirms every showing appointment using Vapi and Twilio and updates Airtable automatically. Before we hop in, I'm Matt. I show you how to build better systems, how to connect your tools, automate repetitive work, and keep your data organized. The result: less grunt work, fewer drop balls, and far more clarity. If you want to build this workflow for yourself or follow along, I give these workflows away for free to email subscribers. You'll get the full N8N template, Airtable base, and Vapi prompts all for free. All you need to do is click the link below in the description and sign up for the email newsletter. Now let's go ahead and check out the workflow. Okay, so here's the workflow. Now I know what you might be thinking. Is this all there is to it? Can I really offload all of the phone calls that I need to make to confirm property showing appointments with just a handful of notes? And the answer is yes, you can. I want to demo the workflow for you so you can see how it works in real time. Hello?
Am I speaking with Matt?
Yes, you are.
Awesome. I hope you're having a great day, Matt. I'm calling because we have you scheduled for a property showing at 4321 Square Circle on August 20th, 2025 at 8 a.m. Are you still able to make it?
Yes, I am.
Great. I've marked you as confirmed. We look forward to seeing you at 4321 Square Circle on August 20th, 2025 at 8 a.m. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks, you too.
Thank you, Matt. Goodbye.
Okay, and that's the workflow. It takes a couple of minutes to run, but that's because of the wait node that we have here in the middle of the workflow, which I'll explain here in a second. But let's go ahead and start at the very beginning. For the trigger, I have the standard N8N trigger that allows you to execute the workflow on demand. If you were to put this into production, my recommendation would be to add a scheduled trigger and schedule this during business hours, Monday through Friday, and have this work for you in the background while you're doing higher leverage tasks. So the next node is the Airtable node. Now, what this does is that it goes to our Airtable base, to the specific table, and it looks for IDs or records with a scheduled status, which in this case means that somebody scheduled a property showing but has not yet confirmed it. So our Airtable base is here, and you will see that we have the property, the prospect name, prospect phone, date and time. The status is now confirmed because it went through the workflow. We have the agent and so on. But in order for this to run, it would have to be scheduled. And so you could have multiple prospects in here, multiple prospects, multiple properties, and the workflow is only going to call people that are scheduled. And you'll see that this is all the data that I just showed you for this particular record. And this is all the data that we got back. And then what we're going to do is we're going to flatten that data so we can clean it up and make it so that we can actually send it via API to Vapi and send it in such a way that that Vapi wants in order for the Vapi agent to actually use it. So to flatten the data, we're just going to also clean up the naming convention here. So, name, phone, property, and the appointment, which is the date and time. And you'll see that we took all of this data that we got from Airtable and we condensed it into these 4 bits of data here. The next step is going to be the Vapi API request. Now, to build this out, you are going to want to use this URL for making a phone call. Then we're going to send over headers. One is going to be the authorization with a bearer and your API key. The next one's going to be the content type. We're also going to send a body over, and it's going to be a JSON body type using JSON. And this is part of what needs to be sent over in the correct way in order for Vapi to be able to use the information in a way that it can make the phone call. And as you'll see here in a minute, we're using tokens in a couple of spots so that the agent can call the person by name. So what we have here is we have the assistant ID, which is the Vapi assistant with the specific prompt and all of the configurations. Then we have the phone number ID. This is going to be for the Twilio phone number. And then where we get into the specific details and where this JSON needs to be written in a specific way is going to be the variable values. So we're going to send over the name, phone, the property, and the appointment. And all of this needs to be sent over as the variable values because these are not static. As I understand it, these aren't static values that Vapi uses like the data below it, which is the customer. This is static for Vapi. If you want to send over a name, if you want to send over customer data, it needs to be the specific properties and keys that they have in their API documentation. So in this case, it's name and number, and I believe they have a couple of other things as well. You cannot send over, for example, property under customer, at least as I have tested and understand it, but I could be wrong. But you can send it over as a variable value. So we send over the name, phone, property, and appointment. This also allows us to create tokens on the Vapi side so that the agent can call someone by name, as you heard when I was greeted when they called. So we're going to hop over to Vapi now because this is where the calling magic happens. So let's go ahead and hop over to Vapi. And this is the Vapi assistant. So this is where you're going to put in your first message. This is where you're going to put in your prompt. This is where you're going to set up the specific voice. This is where you're going to set up your LLM. This is where you're going to basically set up just about everything. So as you can see here, we're going to have the assistant wait for the user. And the logic here is that when the agent is calling the prospect is going to answer the phone with a hello or something along those lines. And so we want the assistant to wait for the user to say hello before they do the first message, which in this case this is Kylie from Mount Hood Homes. Am I speaking with name? And this is that variable property that I mentioned in the N8N API request. And the prompt here is actually very simple. So overview, you're a friendly professional real estate assistant calling to confirm a property showing. Persona, you're energetic and friendly, but efficient. Now for the context, we let the agent know that they're going to be receiving the name, phone, property, and appointment. That way they can confirm all of those details with the prospect. Something I'm proud of, it took me a minute to figure out. You'll notice that we have square circle, and you might have something like 123 Maple Lane, and you might have something with the word street in it, and they're all abbreviated. When I first did this, I didn't add any additional context for that. And the agent tried to say ST or CIR or LN as if they were words instead of abbreviations. And so I had to specifically call that out and let the agent know what ST is and what CIR is and what AVE is, and then ask it to say the word fully when you run into that. So If you receive an address that is 123 Maple ST, you should say to the user 123 Maple Street. And once I gave it that context and that instruction, it worked fine. And as you noticed on the call during the demo, it said square circle, no problem. The objective of the agent is to simply confirm the appointment. The tools is the confirmation tool. And all we want to log is whether or not the property showing appointment is confirmed or canceled, which we will log here. So we have scheduled, confirmed, and canceled. And then for the tool, we just have a confirmation tool where all we're going to do is log the appointment confirmation, whether it's confirmed or canceled, and we're going to have these enum values required. And then we give it an example call so we can give the agent an idea of what we're expecting it to do. And we just walk through the call throughout the example. So this is Kylie from Mount Hood Homes. Am I speaking with name? Yes, this is, Matt. Awesome. I hope you're having a great day. I'm calling because we have you scheduled for a property showing. And then we have the property and the appointment also as tokens, which is, again, while we send those over as variable values. And then, we ask the question, are you able to make it? Yes, I can still make that. Great. I'll mark you as confirmed. We look forward to seeing you on the appointment day and time. Have a wonderful day. And then I walk it through the process. Call the number, confirm you're speaking to the right person, inform the user we have them scheduled for a property showing, tell them the address, tell them the date and time, ask if they're able to make it, and then log whether or not the appointment is confirmed or canceled. The last thing I want to point out on the Vapi end that is really important is very similar to writing code. It needs to be structured in such a way in order for it to work the way you want it. So what I mean by that is I used to have the process at the very top. The problem with having, say, the process at the very top is that it might go through the process first. Let's say you had a process right after a persona. Well, it would go through the process. The LLM, the agent's going to go through that process step by step as it's outlined here. And then it's going to start screwing up because it's not going to have the context. It's not going to have the objective. It's not going to have the tools. And so you're going to find that sometimes it gets it right and other times it gets it wrong. So for example, if we had the process right after persona, it would miss this context. It would probably never get these abbreviations right, ever. It might not confirm the appointment because it would already be done with the phone call by the time it saw the objective, by the time it got to the tools. And then you sort of tidy everything up with a bow with the example call, but the example call doesn't do any good if it's already gone through the process and ended the call, before then. And so everything here is structured. This is structured deliberately in this way in order to give the agent everything it needs before the phone call so that it can actually do the phone call in the way that you want to with fewer errors. So that is all of that. The last thing I want to point out that I have been experimenting with voice AI in particular is the LLM that I use and the voice that I use. I'll have another video on this. I may create another video on this. Let me know if you'd be interested in that sort of thing. But I have tested different LLM models, different version types, and different voice types. And I find that it makes a huge difference. So for example, I used to use the default, which I believe was the 4.0 cluster or mini cluster, one of those. And I found that it was really slow, it just didn't seem to think very well on its feet. is probably the best way I can put it. And it wasn't very natural sounding. It just sounded more robotic, and it sounded more like AI. Whereas when I made the change to 4.1, even though I think it's a bit more expensive, it feels like I'm talking to a real person. It's a night and day difference. Now, the next layer to that is choosing the voice. If you have not tested voices and you just run with whatever the default is from Vapi or even 11 Labs, you are missing out. There are some voices in here to where a person talks at the speed of light, and it's they miss nuance. It doesn't sound like a real person. It just doesn't. It sounds a little too fake. In some other cases, in other workflows that I've built, you have a voice that maybe they talk a little too quick, or they're not as empathetic, because each voice does have their own trait, their own personality, which isn't defined here, but it is defined on the 11 Labs end. And you can get an idea of what it's like here by going through each one and running through a demo call and running through that entire process. But there are some where you ask the agent to be empathetic, because maybe you're calling somebody, or somebody's calling you when they're having an emergency. And you might ask the agent to say, "Oh, that sounds terrible." But depending on the voice you select, it's like, "Oh, that's terrible. What's your name?" And it just goes right into the sales spiel, and it doesn't sound empathetic at all. It sounds fake, and it sounds manufactured. And so Jessica was probably the best voice that I found for a lot of the voice AI that I do. But I also believe that Laura is a good one as well. And I believe there was one other one that I liked. I believe it might have been Sarah. In any event, the point is that I recommend testing a couple of different LLMs and a couple of different voices and finding a combination that suits your particular workflow, if it's at all different from this one. So back in N8N, we have the wait node here, because when you make the phone call when you make the API request and it makes the phone call, you'll get some initial data back from Vapi. But the things that you won't get back are things like the transcript and the summary. So we have a wait node set up, I believe, for 90 seconds. No, a minute. Yes, a minute and a half. So 90 seconds. I find that 90 seconds to 2 minutes is usually a good amount of time. And the reason why we have that is because you need a little bit of time for Vapi to process the post-call data, like the transcript and the summary, in order for you to get it back. If you do not have a wait node here, or if you have the wait node with a time frame that is too short, like 30 seconds, you're not going to get that data back. And it's simply because you're not giving Vapi enough time to process it and send it back over. And so we have this wait node here, and then we go and we send another API request in order to get the post call data back. And so this is going to be set up similar to the other API request. Again, you can use this exactly as is, or you're just going to want to get familiar with Vapi's API documentation. And the URL we're going to want is the one specifically for the call data. And then the first part of this is going to be static, because it's going to be the same for every single call in order to get the post call data. And then we're going to want to add the call ID dynamically. And that is, I believe, going to be this here. And then we just drag and drop that right after the static URL portion. Then we're going to send the headers. You can use the exact same headers from the call customer API request. It's going to be exactly the same. And we don't need to send a body over. And then what you're going to get back is some of the same data that you would get back without the wait node, but then you're going to get the additional stuff. So you're going to get the transcript, you're going to get the recording URL, and you're going to get the summary. To me, all of those are really important so that you can optimize the AI agent and the prompts and the data that you get back over time. So this might be really good to run as is right out of the gate. But then after a month, you might find that the agent, maybe you want more questions asked, or maybe the prospect has questions that you didn't anticipate when you're just calling to confirm an appointment. And so these are things that you're going to pick up when you save the transcript and you save the recording URL and you save the summary for review later on. And now the next step is to have a set node. So we have the transcript. So we just copy or drag and drop this over here. We have the recording, which is a recording URL over here. And then we have the summary. And then the confirmation, it was the tricky, or was sort of tricky. So you can see here, has the, the tool call, it has the name of the tool, and it has the arguments that we're sending through. And it has the appointment confirmation, and then it has confirmed. And it's all as one string, all as one line. And so there's no way as is for me just to send over confirmed over to Airtable. If I were to drag and drop this argument into the set node here, I would get all of it. So what I'm doing here is we pull in that expression and then we just parse the exact word or the exact data that I want to send over to Airtable, which in this case is confirmed, rather than the entire string that we got from the tool call. And then that helps us out when we go to update Airtable. So we're going to update Airtable using the record ID, which is, I don't believe it's this specific ID because this is custom done on my end, but I believe it's this Airtable ID, and it's for this particular record. And so that allows us to match the data up with the correct record that we pulled earlier in the workflow. And so we pulled this data here. We got the ID, and we're referencing it again here at the end using this here to make sure that we're updating the correct record whenever we fire the workflow. So we're matching it to the ID. We do not need to update the things like the property, the prospect name, the phone, date, or time. At least in this particular case, we don't need to update any of that. The date and time, if you were to expand this workflow to reschedule the appointment, say you called to confirm and the prospect said, that date and time is no longer going to work for me, you could add an addition to the workflow to where the agent rescheduled the property showing appointment, and then you could send that data through here. So that's a way you could expand this workflow to make it a little bit more robust. And then what we're going to do is we're going to update the status. You'll see here that we have it just as confirmed. And that's important in this case because we're using a single select for the status rather than a text field. And if you were to send over or attempt to send anything over that was not scheduled, not confirmed, not canceled, or not any other option here in this list, it would cause an error. So that's why it's important that we parse the exact word that we wanted out of that tool call. Now, one thing I did here, this was more for fun. For the agent, we have an agent field or agent dropdown so that you can assign an agent to the property showing. So Bruce, Clark, Harley, Pamela. If you know what this is from, let me know in the comments. Little Easter egg for you. What I did here for fun was that I asked ChatGPT to create an expression that would randomly select an agent so that every time we update this information with the status and the recording URL and everything else, it would randomly select an agent from the dropdown. So that way you can cycle through your agents. Then we have the recording URL from the set node and from our post call data. So recording, then we have the summary, and then we have the transcript. all added into the Airtable node. And then when that fires, it sends everything that we've set up over. And then we get the following. We get the status confirmed. We get the random agent. We get the recording here, which you can open up. You won't be able to hear that, but it's working. And then we get the summary, which you can open up here. And then we get the transcript here. So that way you can go through and review it. So that way you can optimize your prompts and workflow in the future if you feel that's needed. And that's it for this workflow. We're looking at 8 nodes. And this workflow will handle your confirmation calls for property showings during business hours while you do other higher leverage work. Very simple workflow, but very impactful, and will likely save you multiple hours per week, if not per month, and hundreds, if not thousands of dollars in actual realized cost, because your time has value. So that's it for this workflow. Please let me know if you have any questions or comments or ideas in the comments below. And again, if you want to have this workflow for yourself, if you want the template, you want the Airtable base, you want the Vapi prompts, just click the link in the description, head over to my website, sign up for my email list, and I will send this and all other workflows that I've given away for free. I will send all of those to you immediately within a few minutes. And that's going to be it for this video. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.